With the current progression within the One Piece world, we've been able to acquire a shitload amount of new information, lore, and a whole new perspective on the One Piece world. But this also brought up a rather interesting elephant we need to address, that being the power scaling of the old gen pirates. So without further ado, let's get right into it. When you think about the old generation, we just look back on Marineford and the opinion the general public was able to obtain after that point. It has become abundantly clear that we believe that the old gen should basically sit around the Yonko level and above the Yonko level. And our main reference for this is of course Whitebeard. Although he's far out of his prime, he was portrayed to be on the same level as the Yonko. And we know for a fact that it's not even clear who was considered stronger amongst the Yonko, even when we're including an old, sick, crippled Whitebeard who's literally 2 feet into his own grave. This guy is damn near dead out here. But someone like Kaido was making his way to Marineford for the sole purpose of running the fade with Whitebeard to see just how strong he has become in comparison to this old man. So if an old man like Whitebeard is already held on the standing of a Yonko, and someone like Garp is held with the same respect, it's not a stretch to say that these guys in their prime are above the Yonko. This was very much widely accepted by the community, and very few people would try to debunk this or dispute this point. But then coming into Elbaf, a few things pretty much changed. For starters, we have Loki. Loki and the Rock's flashback pretty much, I wouldn't say destroyed the old gen scaling, but brought it down to a significant degree, because people stopped holding certain characters in as high of a regard as they should have, and may have actually been pulled away from the point of the entire flashback. Because going into the flashback, it's immediately established that although we have old gen monsters and beasts like Garp, Whitebeard, Roger, Rocks, these guys are not the only top dogs out here, as we have freaking giants like Harald and other people who have direct statements to these guys like Sengoku, though we do not talk about Sengoku here. This essentially gave us a wider framework to work with, as now there is essentially a web of scaling where through relationships of other characters and how they interacted within this flashback, we could have a kind of scale of where these guys sit within this time frame. And it is, well, in my opinion, and I guess most people's opinion, people do believe by the time of the Rocks flashback, the only real top tier in their prime was someone like Rocks. So that would be Rocks, and then we have people like Roger and Garp going a step below that. But this then creates a very interesting vacuum, which is the Harald problem. Harald was portrayed to be on an equal plane to Rocks, and only actually lost to Rocks one time, and that one time that he loses, it is highly implied by the narrative and his actions after the Rocks Valley incident that he was not 100% trying to stop Rocks. In fact, he wanted to help Rocks go and save his family when he understood what was at stake, but he couldn't go against the Marines and just actively help Rocks outright. So it is widely implied that Harald never intended to defeat Rocks, so he potentially just made it seem like fought a tough battle and lost. But this could be considered speculation, but rather than that, we do have a fight before this point where Harald and Rocks are literally fighting damn near to the death, and these guys have an insane amount of damage on their bodies as they are literally going band for band until Rocks just leaves the island and Harald refuses to become Rocks' friend. So the portrayal was already there. And with this portrayal, we'll have to look at the other events within this flashback, as we also have Rocks getting Domi Reversi'd by Emu. When Rocks got his Domi Reversi amp, not only did immediately take out Big Mom and Kaido with literally low difficulty. I'm not even kidding, bro. Just spammed attacks on these niggas and just left them float, and then immediately he attacks Whitebeard, and then they clash, destroying one of the mountains on the island. But even though that's what happened, Whitebeard hit the giggity out of there and he ducked the fade, because he was not really built for that shit. He was not for none of that. But Roger and Garp end up fighting Rocks in a 2v1 matchup. And in this matchup, Roger and Rocks had a very interesting interaction, because whenever Roger would attack Rocks, he wouldn't be able to go through his Conqueror's Haki. And both Roger and Garp say his Conqueror's Haki is just so strong to the point that he negates their Conqueror's Haki. This doesn't seem to be something that Rocks should have had prior to this scenario, because they wouldn't be surprised by it and wouldn't feel like it's necessary for them to start jumping the nigga, because before this point, both Roger and Garp were confident to go and have a 1v1 with this nigga. But at this point now, they're talking about, yo, let's actually work together to put this guy down. So clearly, it's implied that Rocks got an amp equivalent to both Roger and Garp working together. To me, that's a massive amp. From being relative to characters to suddenly being on a pedestal where they need to 2v1 you isn't necessarily a small thing. And then they end up winning, and it was an extreme diff fight where all parties were not able to move after the fact. So very impressive right here. But then we also have Harald getting his Holy Knight transformation. Here's the thing, we don't actually know how much of an amp the Holy Knight transformation is, but we could also surmise just how powerful it is. How do we do this? First, we look at Harald. Harald is already relative to someone like Rocks, and then after that amp, that boy Harald was 2v1ing Scopper Gaban, who's not too far from his prime, and Shanks, who still had both arms. So it is rather impressive, to be honest, that he was able to fight these two guys at the same time and do the shit that we saw Scopper doing in Elbaf. You understand why this was rather impressive. But that being said, that boy Harald was now on a place where I could confidently say the versions of Garp and Roger who were on Rocks Valley wouldn't be able to defeat this guy in a 1v1 matchup. And as for which one is the better amp, the Holy Knight transformation or the Domi Reversi transformation, I do still believe that the Holy Knight transformation has to have more effects than the Domi Reversi transformation, considering as it's more risky to Emu, as we see that if you kill one of his Domi Reversi warriors, that really doesn't do shit to Emu, but if you kill one of his Holy Knights, that actually affects Emu directly. It wouldn't be a stretch to say the Holy Knight transformation is just better than Domi Reversi transformation, because in Domi Reversi you completely lose your mind, so there's no battle IQ in that shit. So maybe the only factor is battle IQ, but regardless of this, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to put Holy Knight Harald and Domi Reversi Rocks on the same tier of power. It's not too much of a stretch to do that. But then someone like Loki is able to get Ragnar, the Nick Dog fruit, and come and completely destroy Harald in a 1v1. Though at first I really didn't care about what Agenda was saying at the time. I was more on the point that Loki has defeated Harald, hence he should completely outscale the likes of Domi Reversi Rocks, everyone on God Valley, and that's that, and we all good. Simple chain scaling. But then we move forward and we know that a little over 6 years ago in the main One Piece timeline, Loki gets stopped by Shanks and is tied down to the bottom of Yggdrasil, which is the Adam tree. And after Loki gets tied down, everyone who talks about how it happened emphasize that Redhead Shanks put him down. This is important because if Shanks put down Loki, under my previous logic, Shanks should definitely outscale Holy Knight, Harald, Domi Reversi Rocks, Roger and Garp working together on God Valley, and everything else below that, which was pretty insane. And the community had come to the conclusion that this shit doesn't really make sense, and Shanks must have jumped Loki. And then we all like, yeah, Loki is ridiculously strong, so that shit doesn't make any sense. But then this boy Loki fights Emu in a spectacular amount of chapters, actually, which is the longest anyone has fought with Emu, and one of the most impressive performances against Emu. But the very important distinction about Loki's performance in comparison to anyone else's performance, the only times he actually dealt damage on Emu was when Emu was reminiscing about the past, then he catches him off guard. Other than that, it was either they're clashing and Emu is just straight up blitzing and overpowering the guy. So clearly Emu is above Loki, no surprise there. But then comes in Mikey D. Luffy, a Yonko by the way, who took down Kaido, and according to statements had an evenly matched battle with Kizaru, whatever the fuck that means. And then this boy Luffy fights Emu, deals 0 damage from the point he gets into gear 5, just walks around Emu and gets absolutely demolished. He damn near dies in less than a chapter. And this was really bad. People were saying shit like Luffy's going to outperform Loki. Yeah, this boy Luffy is going to show why he's the sun god. But clearly the implication here is Yonko level is getting immediately destroyed by the likes of Emu. But then we have an old man Gaban coming in to save Luffy, and the moment this boy is fighting with Emu, it's more like Emu acknowledges Gaban. He doesn't see Gaban as someone who's far beneath him. He more or less acknowledges him as someone who can go toe to toe with him, but he does say you are getting old. He didn't say you are weak, he was more like you are getting old, which is very impressive, honestly, for Emu to acknowledge that I'm thrashing you, but it's mostly because you are getting old, bro. And that being said, this boy Gaban goes ahead and uses that attack, Kamudo, a pure Conqueror's Haki attack that was able to go through Emu's Omen shield, plus Emu trying to actively block the attack with 2 of his weapons. This is important because each time Loki clashed with Emu or tried to attack Emu and Emu blocked with Omen and or a weapon, Loki's attack was never successful. But Kamudo was able to just go right through that shit and just boom, hit Emu and deal damage, leave that boy bleeding and shit. Then he follows up with that attack, which is like the M'd up version of the one he used on Luffy and Zoro. At this point you can just see the destructive capacity, and by your own self this guy can split up islands for fun. So it's pretty obvious that his destructive capacity is just beyond anything we've actually seen anyone casually use within the One Piece world. I don't actually remember the time where people were casually splitting islands and just tossing them up. The only thing closest to this, well, the closest thing to this is like Bajrangan, when Luffy stated that if he used Bajrangan right here, he's going to blow a hole through Onigashima. That's the only thing I could really see coming to this level of destructive capacity. But that's all just to say that Gaban is an old top tier of the old generation who stated to stand shoulder to shoulder with Rayleigh and Roger. How close their difference is, not really important factor, but the fact is he should be relative to Rayleigh and Roger, who are old legends. Then this goes back to how strong Prime Gold D Roger was. If we take 2 routes of scaling right now, we'll just assume that that boy Roger in his prime would scale roughly above Loki, and that isn't really ridiculous to say, because the only real reason Loki scales this high, and the only real reason Loki was able to destroy Harald was one, Harald was actively suppressing himself the moment the negation effects of the Nidhogg fruit took effect onto him. He was able to suppress himself through that battle to let Loki deal the finishing blows and just go wild on him. And 2, Loki's Devil Fruit is literally built in to counter Emu's Holy Knight's abilities and their regeneration. That being said, in a one-on-one fight, I just don't think our current Loki is beating the likes of Roger. If an old Gaban is doing this shit and displaying levels of AP Loki is yet to display. I don't think it is too wild to say the old generation should still scale above Loki, and God Valley was never actually a good representation of their primes. Being king of the pirates and being a top tier old-gen pirate isn't purely about reputation, it's mostly about how strong you are. And after this, I would also want to touch on a little bit more about God Valley. There's a very important thing that people seem to forget, is the fact that although the world government did an active effort to erase the events of God Valley, these guys, Roger, Garp, Whitebeard, were able to build their own legacies that overshadowed the events of God Valley, hence it was so easy to cover up. So these guys just became an insane level of strong after this point, and just exactly how strong they are is still yet to be studied. But I do believe in a very short period of time, I'm going to make a video scaling exactly how strong I believe these old gen pirates are in comparison to each other and with pirates of the modern era like Redhead Shanks and many others who you may want to see get compared by A. Anyway, see you boys when you see you, bro. I'm like tired right now, and it's 2 o'clock and I'm editing this video. Yo, leave that like and subscribe, bro. Hey, catch you. Peace.